Hello, my name is Lee Taylor, and I really like to knit, so much so that some of my friends call me the Knitwit. I hope you enjoyed today's video and possibly even learned something. So let's get started. Welcome to Knit Bits number 15. We have a lot to unpack this week. We have another book looking at Stitch Dictionaries. We have a Swatch Lab featuring 4 different cast-on types. We have project updates, and then I have 3 bonus bits for you this week. So like I said, we have a lot going, so let's go ahead and jump straight over to it. First up, we are going to take a book look. This is covering all of my Stitch Dictionaries that I have. I have quite a few here. I'm going to read off the names, and then I will show you in the overhead. Now I have all of the information for this week's video, all the script and all of that over here on my Kindle, so I will be looking over to make sure I get the correct information. So first off, on the Stitch Dictionaries, we have 750 knitting stitches. It is the Ultimate Knit Stitch Bible. In fact, I can show you here. Obviously I use this one because there's sticky notes all over. Next we have Mosaic Knitting by Barbara G. Walker. There's 380 patterns, including 116 magic mosaics, and I will go into that during the overhead. Then we have a set of 3 books. They're not all by the same person, but they all have the same format, so I group them all together. So first off, we have Cable Left, Cable Right, 94 Cables by Judith Durant. Then we have Cast On and Bind Off. With this, we have 54 Methods by Leslie Ann Bester. And then lastly, we have Increase Decrease, 99 Methods by, again, Judith Durant. So that's just a quick overview of them. We will go more in depth in the overhead, which is coming up next. In this week's book look, we will be going over looking at, let me zoom out here. We have 750 Stitches, the Ultimate Knit Stitch Bible. It does not have an author to it, but that's okay because it was compiled from multiple sources. It just didn't say who did the actual compiling, but it is St. Martin's Griffin out of New York. And I will put a link down below on where you can get it. I bought mine off of Amazon. But what a Stitch Dictionary is it comes through, let me see if I can do this, and it shows you what the stitch pattern will look like. And then it tells you how to work to get that. And then you can add that into, say, a sweater pattern. But it's your job to figure out how to, like this is a multiple of 8 plus 7. It's your job to figure out how to incorporate that evenly. This just tells you how to do it. And they have things like lace and, different cables. Back here we have some color work. And then we have some edges and trimmings. And, it starts off extremely basic. It gives you a list of abbreviations, but it starts off extremely basic, garter stockinette and reverse stockinette. Now, this is interesting because you knit stockinette where the knit sides are facing you. So you knit on the right side, purl on the wrong side. To get reverse stockinette, you can either, 1, flip the fabric over, or you can purl on the right side and knit on the wrong side. So it's the same piece of fabric. So if you're working through your book, you don't need to knit both of these because you already have it's just the flip of it, okay? So that is what a Stitch Dictionary is it's literally a dictionary for different stitches. So there's the 750. Then we have Mosaic Knitting by Barbara G. Walker. And this edition includes 116 magic mosaics, which are some of them back here, not all of them. So what a magic mosaic is, and yes, there are some symbols in here that may have some negative connotations, but that is not what they originally meant. So they are added. So what a magic mosaic is we'll take this one right here, for example. If you knit just that block right there, and then you turned it and knit there, and you turned it and knit there, and you turned it. So a magic mosaic is, the block is separated into quadrants, and each quadrant has the exact same thing in it. It's symmetrical both sideways and up and down, which is an amazing feat of mosaic knitting that you can get. So there's different sections in here, and with mosaic, there's no reason to write anything out. You're going to work whatever your dark stitch is, and you're going to either knit across and then purl back, or you're going to knit everything, and then wherever there's the odd, so like this is a dark row, if that's a light, then you're just going to slip your stitch and work across. That's just how mosaic knitting is shown. It's always in chart form. And she wrote each one of these out by hand with graph paper, and either a pencil and a pen, and worked them all out, knit her own swatches, and then compiled the book together. And then, you know, someone has gone in, or she might have done it and made copies, but just different mosaic knitting patterns. So definitely a favorite book of mine. Next, we have this set of 3 that I talked about. So these two here are written by the same person, Judith Durant, and then this person here was Leslie Ann Bester. So 94 knitted cables that the twist goes to the left, and then there's some that the twist goes to the right. This obviously does both, but not all do that. So you'd come in here, it gives you how they chart for cables, and then it walks you through how to do a 2/2 cable. So that's 2 stitches crossing over 2 stitches, where the crossing goes to the left. The stitches on top go to the left. And then I imagine that just before, or maybe it's just after, yes, is a 2/2 to the right. So it's 2 stitches crossing over 2 stitches where it leans towards the right. It's not a decrease. You're still having 4 stitches. You're just moving them across the fabric. So that is what a cable is, and that's how this is set up. Now the next one is the cast on bind off, 54 methods, and it is grouped into, you know, all purpose for ribbing with moderate stretch, and then ribbing with when you want a lot of stretch. End of row, so if you need to add stitches along the edge of a piece of fabric. Some super stretchy ones, decorative, temporary hems such as provisional cast-ons for toe-up socks, and circular startings for the cast-ons. Then back here, the bind-offs, you have all-purpose, lace, decorative, stretchy ribs, and then very specific uses. And it just breaks up and just shows the different bind-offs and cast-ons. Last, we have increase and decrease. And this one doesn't have that little handy chart in the front, but it works. It shows, you know, natural or neutral, right and left leaning. So that's where we're taking a stitch and we're getting rid of one by placing one over, like the knit 2 together leans to the right, SSK leans to the left. This shows you how to do those in increases and decreases and combinations. And it just gives you information on how to work it. It does very visual and written out, so that way you know how to do that. So those are a look at my Stitch Dictionaries. In this week's Swatch Lab, we are going to be doing 4 separate cast-ons. We're going to be doing the thumb method, the knitted on, the cable cast-on, and I'm going to go over the long tail cast-on once more. We will be using 4 separate colors, and I got a very bulky weight yarn and large needle, so it will be a lot easier to see in the Swatch Lab. So let's hop over, grab some needles and some yarn, and practice along with me. As mentioned in the overview, this week's Swatch Lab, we're going to be doing 4 different types of cast-ons. We will be doing the thumb method, and I'm going to use different yarns for each one so that way it's a little easier. So we got the thumb method, we got knitting on, we're going to have cable cast on. Sometimes it's just called the knitting cast on, but knit it on. And then the long tail cast on. I want to go over that one again, and I just want to touch base on all 4 of the most common cast ons. We can go more in depth later, but I want to just get the bare basics out of the way. This is a very bulky yarn, as you can tell, and I'm using a 10 millimeter, which would be a US 15, I believe. I could be wrong on that, don't quote me. Normally I just go by the millimeter. That's just what I use most often. But just a 10 millimeter bamboo double pointed needle. It's short, so it doesn't interfere with my table here as I knit. So let's jump straight in and start with the thumb method. So this one isn't a ball, so I'm going to put this in a little cup so that way it will roll as it needs to. And on especially this yarn, because it's very prone to coming apart, this is a 3-ply yarn, all acrylic. I just tied a little knot in the end so it doesn't just keep fraying. So what we're going to do with this is we're just going to make a slip knot, okay? And for those who don't know how to make a slip knot, I will show you the way that I do it. I just come around like this and make a loop, okay? Where the small end comes over, and I pinch that with my fingers, and then I take this loop through like this, through the backside, so it's like this, and then you just draw it up close. Okay, that was completely off screen. I apologize. I'm looking here instead of looking on my camera here. I film with my phone and I just wasn't even looking. So once more, make your loop, okay, pinch it, take that up and through like so, okay, show that again, small end over, pinch it, take the long end and put through like that, okay, and pull that close. Now you don't want to pull that super tight, you want it to be able to still slide. That is a slip knot, okay? Then we're just going to put that directly onto our needle, okay, like so, okay? Now for the thumb method, there's 2 ways of working the thumb method. It obviously is called the thumb method, so what you can do is you put your needle in your dominant hand, which for me is the right, and then you have the rest of your yarn over here. Now I have the yarn coming from my right side because that's the way that I usually knit because I'm an English style. It does not matter which way the yarn comes from, but you do need to work the other part on your thumb, okay? So you come up and wrap the yarn. You know, I hold this down here, it's just automatic. And I just come and wrap my thumb underneath like that, okay? So I've got that. And what you're going to do is you're going to take the point of your needle and come underneath this one right here, in between the 2, okay? You see that? How that kind of makes a triangle shape of sorts? You're going to take your needle in between that. So you're just flipping that over and coming up underneath like that. Then you're just going to pull your thumb out of that loop and pull up. So that is 1 stitch. Some people count their original, the slip knot, as a stitch. Some do not. That's entirely up to you and personal preference. I usually do count it, but you don't have to. When you work back to it, you can just slip that off your needle and be fine. So once again, let's do this thumb loop. Take your yarn in your hand, and like I said, I usually just grab it like this automatically and bring your thumb underneath it like so. So you've got this little horseshoe, okay? And you're going to take the point of your needle under here like this, through and on. We have now made another stitch. So let's do that again. Thumb under, make your horseshoe, take your needle under what's coming from your thumb into your hand, under, let your thumb out, and pull 2. That is another stitch. Now, like I said, there are 2 ways of doing that. So let's do a couple more of these. and then we will do the alternative method. And then at the end, I will show you a swatch. I will knit in garter stitch a swatch of each of them and put them side by side so you can see the cast-ons along with their garter stitch, assuming, let's say it's a scarf. So this would be the bottom or top edge of a scarf, okay? So let's do this thumb method twice more. So thumb under, stitch or point of your needle, under and through, thumb out, and pull up. You don't want to pull super tight. Your instinct is going to do that, but don't pull super tight. Thumb under, needle through, thumb out, pull snug, okay? Now then, like I said, there's two different methods. I don't do the thumb method this way because I found a different way. It's called doing a half hitch. And what you do is you take this yarn right here and you're going to flip it over on itself so it loops like that, okay? See how the working yarn is, so the small yarn coming off the needle is under the other yarn. Dog hair. Like that, okay? See that? Once more, I'm just going to flip that over. And what you're going to do is just take the point of your needle and put that on there. And see, that makes the exact same shape. So I just do that. It's much easier than the thumb method, but you can certainly do the thumb method. There's nothing at all wrong with doing either method. It's what works best for you. So I have cast on a few stitches. Let's see how many I've got here. So we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. So each one will cast on 12 stitches, including our slip knot. And then I will knit a garter stitch so that way you can see the right side of it versus the wrong side of it. So this is the thumb method cast on. Next, we will be doing the knitted on cast on. And this one is in a cake, so it can just set up here. And again, 10 millimeter. And once again, we're going to be making ourselves a slip knot, okay? So slip that over. And, you know, I showed in the last bit, you know, flip that over and then take the working through that. And you can certainly do that. But that is not the way I do it. And I just realized the way I do it right now because I do it just automatically. And so I don't think about it. So I flip that over like that. And I use my middle finger and I flip that tail up. And I use that to come through to make my slip knot. Okay, makes a smaller tail. But in knitted on and thumb cast on and even cable cast on, that short little tail is not a problem. You do want to make sure you leave long enough tail to weave in at the end, which will be its own video, so don't worry. So now we're just going to place that directly onto our needle. Snug that up, not tight, but snug. Then we will grab our second needle, our working needle, and what we're going to do is we are quite literally going to knit on stitches. And how we're going to do that is we're going to treat this cast on like a regular stitch. You know, grab your, just like you're setting down to knit. And you're going to go into that stitch. Excuse me, I've got the burps today. You're going to go in through that stitch. And it's a little snug because it's the slip knot. And you just naturally want to pull that snug. Try your best not to. You don't want it super tight. And we're going to wrap as if to knit, just like knitting stitches. Then you're going to come out. And instead of sliding this off, we're going to pull this loop up and slide this needle into that hole, like so, okay? There's our next stitch. We're going to do that again. Go in like you're to knit. You wrap the yarn, come through, pull out a loop, you know, pull out enough slack so you can put that needle on like that. Some come all the way around like this. You don't have to unless you just want to. I could be wrong on that. I don't use the knitted cast on very often. Usually just a couple of stitches, and with that it's usually like in the gusset of a thumb when you're rejoining in the round and you're not going to see it. So I do it that way. So once again, you go on to knit, go through to knit. This yarn's a little splitty. Wrap just like you're going to knit, pull that through, pull out some extra, twist around, slide that onto the needle, and out. We're going to do that a few more times, and again I'm going to cast on 12 with this. I will knit a swatch and you will be able to see what it looks like at the very end. Okay, so go back, watch these videos. If you click the gear icon in the bottom right corner, you can adjust the playback speed if you need to slow down if I'm going too quickly. But just back up and look, and I will continue casting on until we have 12 of these. Knit a swatch, and I will show you at the very end of our Swatch Lab what they all look like together. That is the knitted on cast on. Next we are going to do the cable cast on. Again, this is in a cake, very convenient for me, very bulky yarn and big needles. These are the largest double points that I own because I'm not going to knit anything larger than that. So this is very bright yarn, so bear with me if that's a little gaudy on the screen. I don't know how bright that's showing up on your screen. So we're going to start off once again with a slip knot. Make our loop, bring the tail through like so, hold these two and just pull that loop like so, and you've made your little slip knot. This goes, as always, onto the needle and snug up, not super tight. Now then, what we're going to do with the cable cast on is a little bit different, okay? We are going to go in as if to knit, similar to the knitted on cast on, but slightly different, okay? Going to go in as if to knit and cast that on just like that, and we're going to put that onto our needle, okay, like so. Now for the rest of the cast on we're going to do this differently, okay? So there's a stitch and there's a stitch. What we're going to do is take the point of our needle and we're going to go in between those stitches all the way through the back. It does not go through one of the legs of the stitch. It's all the way through the back of the needle, okay? It does not through any stitches. It is pushed in between stitches. Gonna wrap as if to knit, pull that out like you're working a stitch, okay? It's a little fiddly. I apologize for being bumpy. I'm resting my elbows on the table. So now we're going to pull out some slack and slap that on the end of the needle just like we did with the knitting on, okay? Just like that, okay? And we're going to do that again. Go in between these two stitches, all the way in between them, okay? Wrap as if to knit, pull that through, and then slide that, give yourself some slack, and slip it onto the other needle, like so. It's very similar to the knitted on, but instead of knitting into a stitch like this, we're going in between stitches like that, okay? That is called the cable cast on. And again, you would just work that all the way across till you have your desired number of stitches plus 2, because what you're going to do is you're going to slip these 2 stitches off, because this first stitch is not a cable cast on stitch. It is a knitted on, and that will look drastically different. So slip these 2 stitches off and cast. So you're going to cast on the number of your stitches, in this case 12 plus 2, so 14 stitches. And at the very end, just slide these others off your needle when you come back and work, okay? They will unravel, and that is okay, because we don't need them anymore. It just becomes a long tail. And then you would go back in between stitches, wrap your yarn, pull it through, give yourself some slack, and slide that onto the other needle, okay? So keep doing that, 12 stitches across, and knit yourself a swatch. And on all of these, I have not mentioned this before, but on all of these, when you get done knitting, doing your cast on, if you want to take a picture of that and send it to me, I will put it up here on the video with your permission. Or if you want to do your cast on and then knit a small swatch, I will be more than happy to receive pictures such as that, and if you allow me, put them on here. I'd love to see what my viewers are making. So again, I'm going to cast on 12 stitches and knit a swatch, just a little section in garter stitch, probably an inch or so, just well enough that you can see the bottom edge. So that was the cable cast on. In the final Swatch Lab bit, but certainly not least, we're going to be doing the long tail cast on once more. So I've got my big yarn, my big needles, and let's get started. So one of the drawbacks with the long tail cast on is you have to have a long tail, which is obvious from the title, but what that means is you have to guess, or sometimes you can measure how long of a tail you're going to need, because you have to have a long enough tail because you're going to work with the tail on the cast on. So you got to make sure that you have a good, length. Now, some people, when they do a long tail cast on, will work from the center of the ball as well as the outside of the ball. I have not done that. I don't know how to do that and stuff not tangle up, so I skip that and I just go. And if I have too long of a tail or too short of a tail, I just rip it all out and redo it. It takes a few moments to do it, even if, now if you have like say 500 stitches or 250 like my temperature Afghan, that might be a little annoying to have to rip out and redo all that. But there are ways of doing that. You can take and place it over and wrap 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and you know that long of a tail is needed for 10 stitches, and then you would just wrap that over on itself. If you need 250, you'd wrap that 25 times. So you can do it that way. I don't always have luck with that. I've gotten now to where with certain size yarn and certain size needles, I can pretty much gauge what size tail I need, but I do still make mistakes. I made 2 of them this morning when I was casting on my sock that you'll see in the update. So at no point in your knitting are you immune from making mistakes. It's how we handle them and how we move forward that matters, but that's as all things in life. Now, this is not a self-help section, so we're going to skip all of that and get right down to long tail cast on. So as usual, we are going to make a slip knot. So we made our little slip knot. Okay. Now with this one, you got to make sure that you get this sorted. So this is the tail, the short bit is the tail, the part attached to the ball is the working yarn, okay? You're going to put your needle through, and I like to have the working yarn to the back on my long tail cast on, and then cinch that up. Not super tight, but just snug, okay? Because for me, that counts as a stitch, so I want it to be about the same tension as a regular stitch. Now there's 2 methods of doing the long tail cast on. I will show you the method that I learned, which is a two-handed, is a one-handed, and then there is a two-handed method. So let's do the one-handed first. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab the yarn with our last 3 fingers here. And we're going to put our finger and thumb in between those so it spreads those out, okay? And flip over. So now we have what looks kind of like a slingshot, okay? And what we're going to do is similar to the thumb cast on. We're going to come underneath right there, but this time we're going to flip over and go over the one coming from our finger, go under that, then we're going to twist back over, and we're going to take this point back out the hole that we come in through the thumb, okay? It's got to go back out the way it came, just like that. So what you have on your needle is going to be a crisscross like that, okay? Can you see that? Then we're going to take our thumb out and our finger, and we're going to take our thumb and we're just going to kind of pull that too and spread that out, okay? Pull snug, don't pull super tight. If you have a tendency to pull super tight, when you go to cast on, go up a needle size. That way when you go to knit through, it's the right size and your cast on won't be too narrow. So once more, let's do that again. Gonna make our little slingshot, okay? Hold the bottom, let me get some extra yarn slack here. Gonna hold the 2 yarns in the bottom of our hand, okay? Put our finger and thumb in between, spreading those apart, like so, making a diamond. Then we're going to twist our hand, so now it makes a slingshot, okay? We're gonna go under the yarn that's coming from the thumb into the hand, like so. We're going to flip and go over this yarn here. Then we're going to come under that yarn. So we've picked that yarn up. Now we're going to go back through the thumb hole, pull that out, and then I just take my thumb and just pull like so. That is a new stitch, and this finger is already in position to make one more. So let's do this together. Under, over, pick, out, snug. Okay, that is the one-handed method. Now the two-handed method is you make like this, okay, and you're going to pick under, and then you're going to take your other hand and wrap the yarn around like so, back through and out like that. It does the exact same thing, only it adds an extra hand movement, which is okay if you are okay with that. If not, do the one-handed. So we're going to go under just like we do the thumb method. Then I hold my needle, grab the working yarn, wrap the needle as if you're knitting, okay? Which is counterclockwise. You always wrap counterclockwise. Then you're going to take your point of your needle, back out your thumb loop, and pull that snug. Okay, I'm going to do that a couple more times. I've seen where they also do it this way and come under if that's easier for you, but the thumb works just as well. So under the thumb, wrap around, back out the hole, and pull snug. Once more. Under, wrap, out, and snug. And make sure when you snug your stitches, see how I'm way away from the point? I'm well on the shank of the needle that's all one size. I'm not up here at the point where it tapers. Make sure you tighten or snug up your stitches around the full circumference, or your stitches are going to be too tight, okay? So that is the long tail cast on. I'm going to knit a little gauge swatch, just a little bit, so that way you can see how this looks on both sides. So stay tuned. This is the different levels or different styles of cast-ons on each swatch. Again, this is thumb method, knitted on, cable cast on, long tail cast on. So the red is kind of tricky showing up, so that's what it looks like on what I'm calling the right side, which is the tail off on the left hand side of my work. And that is what the back side. Again, this is a very bright yarn, so I apologize for that. But you know, it's very consistent across with it. The thumb method has this, I'm trying to do it where it'll focus in on just the green. There it goes. Very nice, pretty cast on. It does look different on either side. You know that you've got kind of a chain, and this side you kind of have, you know, just little diagonals with a little. Anyways, that's the thumb method. The knitted on, and this is most likely my own technique, and the needles that I have are not the best for this, but you can see how gappy that is. I mean, if I take that away, you can see right through that. I'm sure there's ways of fixing that, and both sides don't look so great, but again, I don't use this one a lot, so I'm not very practiced up on that one. So that could be why that is. Now the long tail cast on definitely is like the thumb. There's two separate sides. There's what a lot of people call the smooth side versus the bumpy side. Now, one of the good things with the long tail cast on, or one of the things to think about, is you're not only casting on a stitch, you are also working one row of knitting at the same time. So you're actually getting more done with this than you are with, say, this one. So that's just something to keep in mind. They do have similar looks. If you hold those together, do it like this here. Both have that similar there, and then when we turn them around to this side, to the other side, that is where they're different. This you have your little purl bumps, and this one is a lot less noticeable, as well as you don't have that row of knit stitches right there. It butts right up to it. So just something, unless your pattern specifically says what kind of cast on, it's up to you which one you use. I use this one 9 times out of 10. That is one of the first times that I've ever gotten the thumb method to come out that clearly. Normally it looks very sloppy like this. Now, I say that's sloppy, but if you're going for like a lace edging, you could take and stretch and block that out and make that part of it, So it's not that it's bad. First of all, I'm just not used to it. And second of all, it depends on what you're going for. So I just wanted to show you those are what these are up close. I showed you both sides. Again, this is not showing up because of how bright the yarn is. But we have, once more, thumb method, knitting on, cable cast on, long tail cast on. So something to keep in mind next time you go to start a new project. This week I have a lot of project information updates. Not necessarily a lot of stuff that's been progressed on some of them. Some of them I've made a lot of headway on. So we're going to be taking a look at my cardigan, the blue cardigan that I've been working on this month. We're going to be taking a look at the best scarf ever. We're going to be taking a look at a birthday gnome. We're going to be taking a look at socks, as well as discussing what to do moving forward when you've made a huge mistake. So all of this and more in the project update section ahead. On the best scarf ever, I have completely finished knitting the body as well. So I completely knit the body. I did 150 ridges in this, which was about 3 feet, as well as I finished off the mosaic. There's where I added on. So that's where we were last time I updated. So I've finished the knitting entirely on this. I just have to weave in ends. And I also blocked the other side. So that is what the design is once it has been blocked. Again, this was a pattern of my own. You can tell each little block there is completely surrounded by these orange stitches. Okay. Each one is called True Balance. And this was actually the pattern that we knit the mosaic pattern last week. So if you want to knit this scarf, it's simply both of those patterns together and then 3 up, and then you cast on 2 stitches for selvage for every repeat. So I have 2 repeats, so I have 4 selvage on this side and 4 selvage on this side, because it's 2 on each side per repeat. So there's really no need to do an overhead of this one, because I can just show it all right here. But I was able to complete this entirely, and I'll actually even stand up and you can see what it goes to. It goes to about my waistline. So it's more like a gentleman's scarf made to just set over a coat and just be pretty. Sorry if I bumped the mic there. You can wrap it around your head if you want to, but it's more designed to be perfectly fine open. Sorry, I didn't realize that was over my mic, and that's probably making all kinds of nasty noises, so I apologize. Anyways, you can definitely wrap it around once and have one on the front and one on the back. It's a scarf. Wear it how you want to. Next up, we are going to take a look at something that I have been designing myself using yarn from Chicken Lady Fiber Company, or Fiber Arts, I'm sorry. And I will put the link down to her website to that, and then you can go and find this yarn. And you'll see this better in the overhead. But it's a shawl. I got a little antsy and decided I needed to cast on something just for some relaxing knitting. And I decided, you know what, if I'm going to do that, let's see if I can design something. So I'm working on a shawl design, which is not surprising. When I go to design something, 9 times out of 10, it's a shawl. Next up, we have, as I mentioned, sorry, I've got all my projects just right down here. So you're going to hear my chair creak and you're going to see me go off. It's because all of my projects are just right here. Next, we have the beginnings of the birthday gnome. My neighbor has a birthday coming up on the 22nd, and he loves the Cleveland Browns. So there's the orange hat for it. And then I've got from my stash, I didn't have to go buy any. That was very nice. One of the main reasons to stash, you've got yarn on hand at all times. And then the body's going to be this brown. So I'm almost done with the hat. I think I have 12 stitches per needle and I need 15. And so this will be done in a couple of days. So next week's video, I'll show you a picture of the finished object. Because like I said, his birthday's on the 22nd and that will be before the next video. So it'll just be a picture. So I've got that. Then I've got, let's see here where I've set. Oh, right here. It's holding up my tablet so I can see what I'm doing. I had a doctor's appointment to go to today. I was the driver for this appointment, and I wanted something that I could just knit on that was, compact and easy to go. So I chose to cast on for a pair of socks. This is sport weight yarn. I will leave the information on where to get this down in the description. It is off of Amazon, but you cannot get this particular color anymore. So I just, I'm almost done with the foot. I have one more increase round to go and increase 4 stitches, and that just shows me which side is the right side. So that is the little sock, and I almost got it completely done by the visit. So that's moving along quickly. This sock, I'm going to do stuff a little bit differently. I have sensitive feet, so I'm going to knit it to where I will be able to flip it inside out. So the knit side, which is smoother, is against my foot, and the bumpy purl side is out, to see if that helps with my feet. And if not, my brother has the same foot size, so they may just end up being Christmas gifts for him. We will see. It's just knitting, and it's a sock, and it's just something. Even if I can't wear socks, they are very easy to knit, very easy to take with. I was able to knit in the car because I rode up and drove back. So I got plenty of knitting time in today on those. And socks, I just enjoy knitting them. I have not knit fingering weight socks with the appropriate needles because that's tiny yarn and tiny needles. So I'm not sure how I'm going to do with that. But so far I've knit worsted, DK, and sport weight, and I'm now on the second pair of sport weight socks. So we shall see how that turns out. Lastly, we have an update on my limit cardigan. This is where we was the last time I checked in, and I'm all the way up to here. But I will go over more of this in the overview section. But I will say, I have talked about gauge multiple times on this video and the importance of swatching and getting gauge. And on this sweater, I swatched. The swatch was the correct gauge. Then I started knitting, and somehow my stitches were slightly too big. And when I say slightly too big, we're supposed to get 8 stitches across, and it'd be 4, so 8 rows up. And I got 7 stitches across, and I think it was 6 rows up. Maybe it was, I think it was 7 and 7, because garter is very squared. which means that the sweater size I'm knitting is way too large. I needed to knit a 49-inch circumference total, and this is now going to be 56 inches in circumference, which is quite a big jump. So now I've got to figure out what I want to do. I laid the sweater back down as I was working on it and thought, geez, that looks really wide. And I was like, well, maybe it looks wide because, you know, it's just laying flat and it'll look different wrapped around. Didn't think to double check directions or anything. And so I wasn't sure what I needed to do, and come to find out, I should have just went with my gut and double checked the width of that and compared it to the pattern, because it was wildly different. So now I get to decide if I want to rip the entire sweater out or try and salvage it with this. I put on a lounge shirt the other day, and it was 2 inches narrower in circumference than my sweater will be. And that was fine, so I could have a loose sweater. The problem is the buttons that I'm using for this sweater are 1.75 inches. So I was going to do a 3-inch button band. So it was 56 inches around plus another 3 inches. So it's 59 inches around. Now what my plan is right now, the buttons are supposed to come in the mail today, and I can put that up and measure and see and go from there. But what I may do is just redo, this was supposed to be the left front. I may just make this the right, because on men the buttons are attached to the right and the buttonholes are on the left side. So what I may do is just put the buttons directly onto the front of the cardigan instead of doing a button band. Just put them directly on and let that eat up, you know, 2 or 3 inches, which will bring everything around forwards. I don't know how that will fit under the arm, because that'll move the side seams around forwards. And then I would just pick up all along, because I have to do something for the back neck. So I may just pick up all along, knit one row, because it'll be from tip to tip, and then bind off. So it's only worked one, and that cleans that up and makes it look more finished. I was going to do a twisted stitch 2x2 rib hem or cuff on the bottom of the sweater, and not do pockets, not do anything around the cuff, just keep everything else garter. And I may still do that. I may decide later that I want pockets on there and add it then, but we shall see. So I don't know exactly what it is I'm going to be doing for this, but it's my fault because I did not check my gauge as I was knitting. I did not check my measurements after I got far enough along that I could actually spread it out and see and check it against the pattern. That is entirely all my fault, and I should have thought about that. Had I just gone and knit 2 sizes smaller than what I needed, everything would have been fine. So those are my options. I can re-knit the sweater, I can see if I can adjust with the buttons, and I can just knit it as is and let it just be way oversized. So we'll see. So swatch and check periodically, and check it against your pattern. Take the time to check so you're not in this position, because I'm very calm and mellow about it right now, but I was very upset about it at the time, because I've spent a good chunk of my time. I've been working on this since the very first Knit Bits video, so I've spent a good amount of time on this for it to be the wrong size. So that is why I jumped over and started on the shawl. So those are my project updates, you know, face to face. I will do overheads on some of them. They don't all need them, but I'll do some overheads on them after this. So look for any of the overheads. As mentioned in the overhead, I've been working on a shawl design, and you thought that you were going to have a video where you did not see the yarn wand, but you would be incorrect, because we're going to be using that today. Now, my table underneath this sheet that is covered with dog and cat hair, that's part of having pets. Underneath this sheet is a 4-inch chunk of foam, and I did that so that way I can pin in as I'm showing you these videos. So if you start seeing holes in the fabric, that is why. So let's look at this design here, and I have with me, let's see here, some pins so I can pin this out and show you. So I'm going to go ahead and open those up and set those off to the side. Now let's take a look at this shawl. It's very, very simple, and I actually ended on the wrong side, and I try my best to not end on the wrong side and set down. I just like to end it always to where I'm fixing to work the right side. That's just me. It doesn't matter one way or the other, just as long as you are aware which is the right and which is the wrong. On this design, that's very simple, but there's also a stitch marker that can go on the right side. So let's take a look at this shawl. This is called Nebula, the Nebula shawl. It is in the Surma bamboo yarn from Chicken Lady Fiber Arts. Let me zoom out here so we can see. I'm going to stand up, so bear with my chair creaking. And what it is, let me pin this out a little bit so we can see and have something to base off of. Grab a few of these pins here. And we're going to pin this to here. Pin this out. Whoops. Let's move that up like so. Pin this out to here. And this will come off to the side here. I know I'm talking to myself instead of you guys, and I apologize. Just pinning this out every so often over here, because there's nothing fancy on this side. You do see these, but we'll get to those in a second. The fancy bit is up here. There are 2 yarn overs back to back. Well, there's 2 stitches in between each one. Let's see if I can get where that'll show up better on camera here. Because you can see one, but you can't quite make out the second one. So when you block this, you would block this extremely vigorously, so that way both yarn overs will show up. I don't know if that's showing up well enough. There, you can see this yarn over is very clear. The second one is not as clear, but that does add a nice little ripple effect to it when it's not shown. But what I want to talk about are these right here, okay? This is called the Nebula shawl, and there are 2 yarn overs. There's a single decrease worked on the edge, which is just simple knit 2 together. And then every so often, I'm not going to tell you how often on camera. If you want to pause and count ridges, that's up to you, but I'm not telling you on camera until I get this thing completely sorted. I do a triple yarn over because I want a great big gaping hole. So let's block out or pin out a triple yarn over so you can see the comparison between a single and a triple. Okay, and when you block, if you have to use a lot of pins, use a lot of pins. That is what they are there for. You can use blocking wires, and that helps, so you don't have to use as many pins. There are blocking, I believe they're combs, and they look like a little comb, and they're just full of needles, and you just poke down. So there, now you can really see that triple yarn over compared to the single yarn over. So in my mind, these are, you know, the little stars in the galaxy, the nebula, and every so often you have these great big ginormous stars that are floating around. And I realize that nebula is not the same as a galaxy, and I realize all that, but I wanted a very space theme, and nebula sounds a lot better than galaxy because I don't want people thinking about the force and the dark or light side. I just wanted very nebula, and this just made me think of the colors of a nebula cluster. So that is the nebula shawl. I am going to finish knitting this up fully and block it, and then I will show on camera, and once I have done that, I will release the pattern. And we could also do a tutorial where I walk you through the pattern. If you guys would be interested in that, you can let me know down in the comments below. But then you guys can see what it will look like when it is finished. This has become my September project since the cardigan fought with me. This is what I've been using to knit in the evenings. And I just have this marker where I mark so I can count the sections in between the little repeats. So this is the Nebula shawl. You will be seeing more of this for sure on camera. The Scolopendra shawl, I talked about that, but it ended up being where I did not need to show more on the camera. It just worked out on its own, and it had single yarn overs and double yarn overs. We talked about double yarn overs in a previous video. We have not talked about triple yarn overs, mostly because I just recently learned how to do it myself, but we will be going over that in a future video, so stay tuned to that. And we can go over that if you guys want to do the walkthrough. So let me know what you guys want to know more about down in the comments, and we will turn that into a video where we can all learn together. If it's something I don't know, that gives me a chance to grow and increase my knitting knowledge. So let me know what you guys think down in the description below. But here is Nebula. Again, this is knit with Surma Bamboo, which is a fingering weight yarn from Chicken Lady Fiber Arts. The colorway is Blurple, and I'm knitting this on a 4.5 Addy Skacel Rocket needle. And absolutely, these Addies are my favorite needles by far. I love the, some are nickel plated and some are white bronze plated. To look at them, I don't know what the difference is, but some, like I said, some are nickel and some are white bronze, but I really love how those work up. So this is the shawl that I've been working on and designing, and starting next month, I will be starting the warding spell shawl. So this will go into hibernation, maybe. I may continue to work on it because it doesn't look like it, but it actually is working up fairly quickly, at least this point. The longer these rows get, the slower progress you get this way, because it just takes longer to go back and forth. But that's okay. This is very good TV knitting, because after you get done with the yarn overs on this end, if it's not a triple yarn over, you're just knitting, and I'm done talking about that. It's very easy Netflix or TV knitting. I don't want to go in and spoil the pattern ahead of time, but very easy. The body is mostly in garter stitch. So stay tuned for updates on this, and that is all for the Nebula shawl for this week. In this section, I wanted to show a little bit more up close on the best scarf ever. I said I didn't need to, but I really do want to talk about something. Let's move up my camera a little bit. And the thing I want to talk about is just on this mosaic part, okay? So when you go to block this, it does want to curl. It's stockinette, and it really wants to curl. So I, pulled it out, and I had to stretch it out a smidge, both this way and this way. Not much, but I did have to do some. And I just, this is all acrylic, so I just put the iron close to it as I could and just steamed it. And it's gotten a little fuzzy, but that's okay. But what I want to show you is the reverse side of this mosaic panel. Now, with some things, like say intarsia, the right side and the wrong side will look exactly the same, but that is not the case with mosaic knitting, and it's not the case with Fair Isle and a few other different types. So what I'm going to do is, since this one's blocked, this will be the side that we look on the back, and this will be the side from the front. So let's flip this out. We don't need to stretch this out and block it to get an idea. And again, I just need to weave in ends and block this, and this will be completely finished. This side we will flip over. So as you can see, you cannot tell what the pattern is from the wrong side. Now, in a previous video, I mentioned that some people will take a piece of felt or other type of fabric and cover and sew that on to where you don't see this side, which is entirely personal preference. I don't mind this because it always faces my shirt, and if it doesn't, that still looks pretty interesting to me, at least. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder and all of that jazz. But that is what the difference in looking at stuff from the right side of life versus the wrong side. So perspective is key, not just in knitting, but in life in general. Now, enough sappy. There is something very important about this particular scarf. This is my 25th project that I have completed this year, which means I have achieved my goal of 25 projects for the entire year. I wasn't sure how many I could get done. Those gnomes come out very quickly, which really helped. I knit 5 over the last 2 weeks and working on a 6th. So those have really bumped my count up. I am not changing my goal, I don't think. I may up it to 30. I'm not sure. I'm getting to where the time of year that it's, you know, we're closer to the end. We're already in the middle of September. I'm filming this on the 15th. And I've got 2 sweaters, a big Afghan, and 1 shawl in progress, with another one being cast on next month. That is 5 large projects. So, and the temperature Afghan I'm wanting done by December or January 1st. I don't know that I'm going to make that deadline because I am very far behind on that. And that is okay. Sometimes projects need to go in a timeout, and that is perfectly fine. That gives me something to do on February. I still have access to what the day's highs are. I take a screenshot of that every month and save that, so that way for like now, I'm behind, I can go back and check and see. So it's not a huge thing, but I was excited that this completed my goal for this month. And I do have some stuff that I'm going to knit. I have a few more gnomes to knit this month, or this year. I have 3 that are for Christmas present, well, Thanksgiving presents, because they're Christmas decorations. So I've got to get those whipped out. Shouldn't take me very long. Gnomes are happening in about 2, maybe 3 days here lately. So shouldn't take long at all. And I already have all the noses and all the beards knit for all the ones that I need to do. I will need to knit some more to continue the gnomes of the month, which I will get back to as soon as the Santa gnomes are complete. So stay tuned for more project updates about, you know, gnomes and everything in general, but I just wanted to go over the way the mosaic looks from one side to the other, as well as why this project is so important to me. In today's bonus bit video, I have 2 pieces of trivia, and I have an unboxing. Somebody has sent me a package here. I've wrapped it up, but a little package here for me to open, and they even put it as, let me block the address, but even put it as the Knitwit. So that was a lot of fun to see getting in the mail, so I will open that at the very end of this week's video. So stay tuned for bonus bits, and we've got 3 of them this week. Like I mentioned, I have a bit of trivia. I've got it all down here on my tablet, so I will be looking down to read to give you the correct information. So bear with me as we go over this first bonus bit on trivia. The record for the longest knitting scarf stands at 4,992.8 yards long. That's nearly 3 miles long. And I apologize for any viewers that don't use the imperial system, they use the metric. I don't know what the conversion is to that, but you can do the conversion. 4,992.8 yards is insane. Nearly 3 miles long. It was knitted by, and I'm going to mess up this name because they're from Oslo, Norway, and I don't know the correct pronunciation, so just bear with me on that. Helgi Johansson. I'll put their name down here at the bottom. And it took him 30 years to knit this nearly 3 mile long scarf. So I would say that's dedication to not only knitting, but to, and not even only to a scarf, but to a single scarf pattern. That is a long scarf. Can you imagine having to knit that and it be on your lap and just 3 miles worth of stuff? I mean, I know the yarn itself can be very long, but it's wound in a ball. something that's wide and is a scarf, that's going to take up a lot of space. So that's our first bonus bit for this week's video, the world's longest scarf. Our second piece of trivia for this week's bonus bit is the largest number of people to be knitting together in one room is 3,083 knitters. 3,083 knitters in one room at the same time knitting. That is a large knit night. And the record was achieved by the Women's Institute in the Royal Albert Hall in London in 2012. I would say that that was a room full of laughter and maybe a few tears of stuff that's messed up and a few choice words because something got messed up. But all in all, I assume that was a lot of fun and history setting. Who would have thought that just going to your knit night would end up being forever chronicled in the logs of history? So just something to think about. 3,083 people in one room knitting at the same time. So that gives you your goal if you want to increase your knit night. That's the number you need to beat to go down in history. So gather your friends and let's do this. Our last bonus bit is going to be opening this package. I wasn't sure if I wanted to open it this way or overhead, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower the camera down. So bear with me, it's going to be shaky. And I'm just going to lower it down and I'll just be a headless body opening this and then talking about it. And if there's anything that I need to show overhead, I will then do that. So bear with me as I lower my camera down here. I've got it on a tripod arm, so it's a little wiggly sometimes. There we go. And I can hold it up. So again, this was sent to me in the mail by a viewer. They mentioned that they might send something to me, but I had completely forgotten. So it was a complete surprise to me. And so let's get this open. Oh, looky here. It's a Susan Bates. And I can tell from the back and the colors exactly this thing. It is a gauge swatch. So these are holes to check your needle gauge, okay? It goes from a US 50 down to, no, you know what? I say that's US 50. Let me look at this here. Those are your crochet hook sizes. So that would be, yes, so a US 50 down to a 0, which would be 2.0 millimeters. And then this section right here is cut out. So you would lay that on a project like this, and you would count the stitches across and the rows up, and that's a 2-inch window, and that would tell you what your gauge is over 2 inches. Then you would multiply that twice to get your gauge over 4 inches, or divide it in half to get your stitches and rows per inch. And then you've got a regular ruler down here, and then the metric up here. So this is going to be very useful and would have been extremely useful in this sweater that I messed up that I talked about. So this is amazing. I am very thrilled to have this. I did not have one. I did have a needle gauge, and I had a tape measure or a ruler. And if you look at last week's video, I was trying to measure with one, but the increments were in groups of 10 inches, 10 these little marks here. There were 10 of them per inch. All of my other rulers are 12 per inch. So I was stumbling over trying to measure something because it was set up in a different format than what I was used to. So that's why I was having so much trouble, and why I had to put the numbers down at the bottom, because I actually was able to convert and do that. So this will be very handy to replace a piece of faulty measurement. And then the needle gauge is wonderful. So thank you very much for sending me this stuff. If there is other people out there that wants to send anything, I'm not requesting that you do, but if you want to, send me an email, and that is in my About page but it is all lowercase, thenitwitpr@gmail.com. And just send me an email and say, I'd like to send you something. Where can I send you? And we will get that all sorted. So thank you again to the viewer for sending this wonderful piece of knitting paraphernalia that is incredibly important. And everybody needs a Susan Bates something, whether it's needles or a gauge. So thank you very much. And I appreciate so much the thought for this. So thank you very much. To wrap up this week's video, I just wanted to go over all the things that we talked about. We took a book look of my Stitch Dictionaries. We did a Swatch Lab using 4 separate cast-ons, and each one in a different color. We looked at my project updates and what happens when you don't pay attention to what you're doing, and how some possible ways on how you can fix that without, losing your mind over some knitting. We also looked at some bonus bits, a couple of pieces of trivia, as well as an unboxing from a very kind viewer. So thank you again for that. So I hope you enjoyed this week's video, and I hope you learned something. And I hope that you now know how to do some cast-ons so you can start your project. So if you didn't knit before and you're interested, there's 4 different ways of getting started. So we're going to be doing some Swatch Labs very regularly on very common stitches and over the next few weeks. So if you want to start learning how to knit, I will try and get those set up in a more logical way instead of jumping all over. So we're starting with the cast on. I've already done the knits and the purls, which I will link to that video down below. I've already done a bind off, but we will be going over different bind off options on a later video. And we will be doing some very common increases and decreases. I went over yarn overs, knit 2 togethers, and SSKs in a previous video, and I'll link that video down below. But we're just going to be going over, very common stitches. So I just wanted to wrap up and reiterate what we're doing for Swatch Labs over the next few times. So until our next video, keep knitting.